Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom Road Reaction Postgame Show where the Sacramento Kings fall again. Tonight to the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are circling, picking the flesh off the carcass of the Sacramento Kings from the three-point line. 130 to 105, Hawks embarrass the Sacramento Kings. They hit a franchise high 23 pointers. They hand out an NBA season high 42 assists. This was a reckless, abandoned show by the Atlanta Hawks. I am James Ham. Joining me, as always, Mr. Rui Thomas. Say hello, Rui.
Hello.
This was ugly. I don't know about you, but it was ugly from the first moment the ball went up in the air. Carl Landry started for Jason Thompson tonight. I don't think that had any bearing on this game, but it sure did seem like the Kings looked off balance. They looked off kilter. All season long, they have been at their best with their standard starting five. Of course, no Darren Collison, so we're already down one starter. But Ben McLemore, Rudy Gay, Jason Thompson, and DeMarcus Cousins have been a solid unit together. George Karl mixed it and matched, gave Carl Landry a little burn. Did not work out at all. Rui, what are your thoughts on just the starting lineup to start?
It was interesting because we haven't seen Carl Landry play very much since Carl's been here. We saw him get a spot start or get the start in Carl's first game. Since he's played like a total of 12 minutes over the last 4 games, and he had 2 DMPs last 2 games. So it was interesting to see him get the start. But we've also seen JT's minutes decline recently. We've seen the Kings go with Derek Williams often at power forward, or Rudy Gay, for instance, in the last game. McCallum, he's been playing well in place of Collison, but I think people are starting to forget how effective Darren Collison was in the beginning of the season. Especially when even when Malone left, that's when he really took off. When the offense picked up its pace, getting really hot from downtown and orchestrating the offense. I guess you could say the experiment didn't work tonight.
Yeah, I would say the experiment didn't work. I wouldn't doubt that they stick with that experiment for a little while longer. Jason Thompson did come off the bench, gave him 9 points and 6 rebounds in 16 minutes. But anytime the other team scores 130 points, I don't really think that 9 points and 6 rebounds helps you at all. So not to call out Jason Thompson, he didn't do anything wrong in this. He got benched. All right, so the Kings are now 1-4 on their 8-game road trip. They let 2 embarrassing games slip through their fingers over the weekend, where they probably should be 3-1 on this road trip coming into tonight's game. But this is a spectacular Atlanta Hawks team. I think that's one thing that we'll point out, that man, they're a juggernaut. I mean, they're 50-13, 13 losses. I mean, they're on pace to win like 67 games. I mean, they're just absolutely incredible. They beat you from the perimeter. They basically do the motion offense. They attack with Teague, and then they have all of these perimeter shooters, which are just absolutely spectacular. Kyle Korver just bombing away. Again, they go 20 of 36 from behind the arc. And this is sort of an interesting thing. After talking to the Sacramento Kings assistant coaches and stuff, if you really break down what 56% from behind the arc means, that means that every time they shoot one of those shots, you're looking at a whopping like 1.8 points per shot. I mean, it's something ridiculous. You just can't compete. It doesn't matter if you're going down and shooting 50% from the field. If you're allowing that on 3-pointers on the other end, you just can't compete. If you're falling behind like 0.6 or 0.7 shots points on every single possession, you're going to lose the game. So this was a one of those games where you came in saying, we got to guard the 3, we got to guard the 3. And Kyle Korver was wide open. I mean, standing alone at one point for like 12 seconds before his Atlanta Hawks teammates could even find him on one possession that I saw in the first quarter. He ends up hitting, 3 of 4 in the first quarter, and this game was over before it started. What is your thoughts on, we'll just skip to the number one point of the night, perimeter defense. What are your thoughts on the Kings' perimeter defense tonight, Rui?
It was non-existent, and then by the second half, the Kings they stopped trying. It was pretty apparent because guys were so wide open, and people weren't even bothering to close out. It was pretty pathetic. We saw the Kings. I mean, the Kings set the tone early, setting themselves up to fail with 7 turnovers in the first quarter, and the Hawks, they got on transition. The Kings are the worst team in the NBA at defending the fast break. They allow the most fast break points per game, and we saw Korver get loose. We saw, the thing with the Hawks, almost all their players can hit the three ball, maybe with the exception of Elton Brand, but it was bad. I mean, we saw Paul Millsap go 3 for 3, not contested at all. I believe the only Hawks player who didn't even attempt a 3 outside of Brand was Horford, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it was just unbelievable. The Hawks started off 7-12 in the first quarter. They finished. They shot 5 for 7 from behind the arc in the second quarter, and then we kind of saw them cool down in the second half. They went 5 for 10 in the third and 3 for 7 in the fourth. But the damage was already done at that point. The Hawks were just gunning for that record.
Yeah, absolutely spectacular performance by the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, you got to take your hat off to a team that actually hits their shots. Korver goes 6 of 8, scores 20. You got 4 of 9 from Carroll. He was huge. He was matching Rudy Gay point for point in the first quarter when Rudy Gay was going off. Millsap, like you mentioned, he did go 3 of 4. T goes 2 of 3. Schrader hits 2 of 2. Yeah, it was 2 of 3, excuse me, and Shelvin Mack hit 2 of 2. This was just a performance for the ages for the Hawks. They're such a solid team from top to bottom. I mean, they've got Horford, who's a beast in the post. They got Millsap, who's your quintessential glue scrappy player. They got Carroll, who's a great 3-and-D guy. They've got Korver, who's just like their lights out guy, and then Teague, who runs up and down the court with reckless abandon. And then you come off the bench with solid players too. I mean, this is a really, really well-built team. They will win the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They will go on to probably compete for an NBA championship this year, barring something crazy out of the Cleveland Cavaliers. But you got to at least hang tough, and you know what's coming. That's what's so frustrating. It's look, you knew they're going to come in and launch. So what are you doing leaving these guys wide open? And again, they just kept collapsing on Teague and letting him deal. And you're like, wow. I mean, how many times do you got to get burnt by the same play? I mean, Teague has 18 points, 13 assists, and he only plays 29 minutes. Just brutal. All right, let's get to some of the Kings numbers. Rudy Gay, 23 points, 10 of 15 shooting, 4 rebounds, 4 turnovers. Actually, Rudy Gay, to me, was the only one who had any energy to start this game, who looked like he was interested in the game at all. Would you agree with that, Mr. Rui Thomas?
Oh, definitely. I mean, he was assertive. His jumper was really on tonight. Miller and McCallum found him some good feeds. Definitely intent on competing with the Hawks. Can't really say the same for the rest of this crew outside of JT. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins was annihilated in this game. His first 3 field goal attempts were all blocked, which really threw him off balance. And I think at that point he kind of melted in because we didn't see the same assertive Cousins, we expect to. McCallum put up nice numbers, kind of, patted his stats near the end of garbage time. Ben McLemore, very forgettable game. Finishes 4 for 16 from the field, 12 points. Just gunning, taking ridiculous shots by the end of this game. The bench did a little bit, but outside of Gay, there really wasn't much going for the Kings.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's a tale of two teams. Two teams going completely different directions. I mean, you have the Sacramento Kings, who outside of DeMarcus Cousins has one other scorer. I mean, Rudy Gay is the one guy that you can count on to score outside of Cousins. So if you take away Cousins and then you slow the center of the court, you really hurt Gay's ability to do anything too. The Kings couldn't even find Cousins. Cousins went 3 of 9 from the field tonight. He finishes with 12 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, only 1 turnover, which was really nice. But he did get blocked. His first two field goal attempts were smushes, and I mean he started off slow. He had a point in the third quarter where he started to get it rolling, and you could see him figuring out a way to find little openings for himself. But man, this team just cannot find him, and he can't bring up the ball every time. And the Hawks play really, sort of a pressure D all over the court. So, I mean, the Kings were slow to get into their offense. That really hurt DeMarcus Cousins. Cousins was slow to get down on offense. didn't establish low post position until, like I said, the third quarter. Once he established low post position, the Kings were able to find him for some easy baskets, but again, just too little too late. Ray McCallum, 15 points, 5 assists. You're right, he did pick up some of those points in junk time. Well, I think he had 1 3-pointer, but 6 of 10 from the field. Now, McCallum has really impressed me. He didn't blow me away defensively tonight, but he's been impressing me every game because he's just solid. I mean, you're not getting anything spectacular, but between him and Andre Miller, I think they kind of make you feel okay about what's going on at the point guard position, even if, kind of like how you felt last year with Isaiah Thomas and Ray McCallum, coming into the beginning of this season, you thought, oh, if that was my starting backcourt and my reserve, then I think we're okay. But that's not what happened, and now McCallum, of course, is fighting for his job again to stay in the league, and I think he's doing a pretty nice job. What is your assessment of Ray Mack so far?
Yeah, well, we've seen his defense regress since he's entered the starting lineup, and that's what his role was, since joining the NBA, being the Kings' best perimeter lockdown guy. But yeah, I mean, he's significantly improved his offense, his dribbling and his decision making. We hear him talk about how his main focus in practice is to work on his pick and roll game, and I think it's really apparent. Getting to the basket a lot better now these days, and not really. He's standing up to these big name NBA point guards that he's facing, night in and night out. He's challenging these guys, and I think they have to respect him now. He's definitely established himself as a quality NBA point guard.
Yeah, and let's get to the other position in the backcourt. Ben McLemore, you got to love what he brings to the table, his athleticism, his quickness, his ability to shoot, his ability to finish. But, man, he has become really, really inconsistent. You have no idea. I mean, I think what happened on Saturday night was he scored 17 in the first half and finished with 20. And, tonight he goes 4 of 16 from the field. A little bit of that was in junk time. I think he had 5 points in the last 2 minutes of the game. He finishes with 12 points, but 3 of 8 from behind the arc. And he is the Kings' primary three-point shooter. Although Rudy Gay is developing very well as a three-point shooter as well, they're finding ways to get him that short three. But Ben McLemore, this is a time where he needs to turn it on and show what he's got for next season. And he's not really doing that. Good game, great game, bad game, good first half, bad second half. I mean, he needs to find some consistency, especially with George Karl has been slowly bringing around Stauskas. And Stauskas tonight, 4 or 5 from the field, 10 points. Now, what I love about Stauskas is that if you allow him to dribble, if you put the ball in his hands and let him dribble drive, he not only creates for himself, but he creates for others. That is what we thought we were getting in the beginning of the season when he was drafted. And it's just, it hasn't worked out. They've used him only as a three-point threat. Now we're seeing him grow a little bit under the tutelage of George Karl. He's understanding the game a little bit better. He's got Andre Miller to sort of work with him as well. I kind of like what Stauskas is bringing. Where are you at with Nick Stauskas right now?
Oh, yeah. Well, we're starting to see some very promising things. You talk about Karl, slowly working him along, and I think he's reacted positively to that. Tonight, we did see a little bit of his playmaking ability, not too much. There was a drive in particular when I believe he dribbled in with his left hand and fed Andre Miller with a bounce pass, cutting Andre Miller to the basket. I don't believe Andre Miller took the shot, but the fact that Stauskas even attempted to make that pass, I don't think most Kings would. You talk about the Kings using him basically as a spot-up shooter for the first 60 games of the season. That's not really what Nick Stauskas should be, right? He has a high basketball IQ, and he's definitely capable of making plays for others. And Karl talked. There was a little bit of talk about playing Stauskas at the point, I believe, and I think he could be capable.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want to go long stretches, and you certainly wouldn't want to go against elite reserve point guards. But I do think that he could handle himself well there for short stints. Yeah, and again, Stauskas just looks like you can see it building. You can see him building towards something. He's starting to find his way a little bit. where again I think McLemore is starting to lose his way a little bit. Again, tonight losing his man all over the court. Just like windshield wiper defense again, where he looks like I don't know, a Ferrari without tires, just rims. Going 120 and losing all four of your tires at once and just sliding all over the place. That's what he looks like tonight. So, all right, let's get to our three keys to the game. We already covered perimeter defense. The Kings were horrible. We got it. The Atlanta Hawks they just look like hawks circling over a carcass, just like picking them off one by one. Ball movement. Now, this is one that was like pretty interesting because the Atlanta Hawks, of course, they hit 23-pointers, so it helps. But 42 assists is spectacular. You don't see that very often. I know that the Clippers had 41 assists earlier in the season. That was the NBA high. But tonight, it was a show, man. They pound you inside. They hit wide open shooters. And if you can't play man-to-man defense on this team, I think you're in trouble. And the Atlanta Hawks probably have a very, very long playoff run in their future. Would you agree with the ball movement was spectacular tonight by the Atlanta Hawks?
Oh, definitely. I mean, their roster, again, like their players are so well rounded. You can plug anyone in and just run the same stuff. They had 42 assists, only 13 turnovers tonight, which I think the Kings would love to, have after every game. Comparing the two offenses, I mean, the Hawks were just, playing carefree. It was almost reminiscent of the early 2000s Kings style offense because, they just kept making extra passes and guys were so wide open. It was just they were almost too wide open. We saw like Mike Scott just breaking wide open threes when he should have been banging them down. The Kings, we've been seeing a lot more movement with Carl as coach, but still too much over dribbling. We saw a few turnovers that way tonight, and the Hawks are so adept at reading those passing lanes, especially with when the Kings telegraphed them, turn those into easy scores.
All right, let's get to your third key to the night, the bench boost. And realistically, the bench played a huge part of this game because it was a blowout. I mean, this was a 20, 25-point game for much of the second half, much of the first half. So the bench actually played extended minutes. They scored 31 points. Nothing really sticks out. Jason Thompson, 9 and 6. You had the nice night out of Stauskas where he had 10 points. But is there anything that stood out to you off the bench tonight that actually made a difference, Rui?
Well, I would say the difference was their defense was really bad because in the second quarter, I think the Hawks shot around like 68%, and the bench was a large reason for that. The Kings offense, they had it going a little bit. We saw JT make an impact on the boards, with some putbacks. And you talk about Stauskas, which was in garbage time, but the Hawks bench definitely dominated. We saw their backup guards go off. We saw Brand play great defense, and they definitely overwhelmed the Kings.
All right, let's get to our MVP of the game. Who do you got for MVP tonight, Rue?
I'm going to go with DeMarre Carroll because Carroll is he's probably like the poster child of this Hawks team. He's been basically just a lockdown combo forward for his time with the Grizzlies and the Jazz, and didn't really find a jumper until his second and third year with the Hawks. He wasn't a three-point shooter at all until then. So he's completely evolved into this complete. You say a 3-and-D guy. I think he can dribble or drive a little bit as well. And he didn't play much defense tonight, but he drops in 20 points, 50% shooting, 4 threes, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and no turnovers. So can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, if I'm going to go with an MVP tonight, I'm going to go with Teague. I think he just orchestrates the whole thing. We had a bunch of just alley-oop dunks, 18 points, 13 assists, 5 rebounds, 7 of 11 shooting. He only plays 29 minutes. Again, he breaks everything down, and then he finds Horford for wide-open alley-oops or wide-open pick and rolls. He finds a guy in the corner. He finds a guy up top. This team makes a lot of extra passes, but, it tells you everything you need to know when a team that makes a ton of extra passes still had a guard who had 13 assists. I'd like to see how many assists that led to assists, passes that led to assists that he had, because I think that number would be tremendous as well. So Teague is my guy for my MVP for this game. Although it could have gone to Corver, it could have gone to Horford. I mean, it could have gone to any one of the Hawks. I mean, they had 4 All-Stars on the Eastern Conference squad for a very good reason. They are a very good team. All right, Rui, do you have any final thoughts this evening?
The Kings keep coming up with new ways to just disappoint the fan base and themselves, and I don't know how many low points there have been in this season, but it just definitely feels like a low point for the franchise. On Wednesday they go in to play the Hornets, which is another team, kind of imploding. So we'll see who has like more dysfunction that night.
Yeah, I mean, they do have a chance to sort of reel in a little bit here. They've got the Hornets. They have some teams that they can beat still on this trip. It's been a very disappointing trip so far. 1-4. They're now 3-7 under George Karl, which I'm sure he is not at all happy about. Lack of effort tonight, a lack of defensive intensity, a lack of everything. All right, so we will be back on Wednesday, like Rui said. The Kings travel to take on the Charlotte Hornets. Man, they just keep changing names. Everyone keeps changing names. The Charlotte Hornets, Al Harrington, Al Jefferson, and the Hornets in Charlotte. So I am James Ham. He is Mr. Rui Thomas. Say goodnight, Rui.
Good night.
And you have been watching, listening, and I don't know, maybe live tweeting the Cowbell Kingdom Road Reaction post-game show. We'll see you on Wednesday night. Have a good night.